Someone Like You by Sparkypasker. Read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 31. Working with a cast was interesting, to say the least. Well, it wasn't a full-on cast. It was one of those thinner ones that allowed for more movement. That being said, it's not like he could actually put much of any weight on the injured appendage. Boss was not happy, but she was also not surprised. In fact, she had commented that it was more of a surprise that she hadn't seen him hurt earlier. But the fact still stood that Izuku was not able to run around like he normally would. This meant he had to man the register and Boss had to make the coffee, at least until Uraraka came in after school. Then, Boss was able to go back to the kitchen and Uraraka took over her spot. Izuku often wondered if Boss had some sort of precognitive quirk, and for all he knows, maybe she does. She didn't have any special features, and Izuku wasn't around her often enough to pick up on any habits caused by her quirk. But she had an uncanny ability to know when the shop was going to be busy or when they were going to need more help. Maybe it was just her years of experience as a business owner. Well, either way, whatever it was, it caused her to open up a new position in the kitchen. In fact, the new hire was supposed to start that day. What a first impression Izuku was giving. Well, there was nothing he could do about it. Shortly after Uraraka came in, the bell above the door chimed. "Welcome!" Izuku and Uraraka yelled offhandedly. They didn't often do things like that during a rush. The door was just opening far too often for them to greet every customer. But they were just finishing up with the last person in line, and there had been a small amount of time since the door had last opened, so they did. "Hey, Sato!" Uraraka exclaimed. "What are you doing here?" Izuku raised one of his eyebrows as he gave the customer their order. "I start working here today. I didn't know you worked here too." "Yeah, I've been working here for a bit, but Midoriya has worked here the longest." Sato turned to Izuku. "Hey there. Nice to meet you. I'm Sato Rikido." "Hello." Izuku held out his hand. "I'm Midoriya Izuku. It's nice to meet you too." "Hey!" Boss yelled, sticking her head out of the window. "If you're just going to gab, you can leave. If you're here to work, then get back here." Sato apologized awkwardly and quickly made his way towards the kitchen. "So, you know him?" Izuku asked once Sato was out of sight. "Yeah, we're in the same class," she said, smiling brightly. "Oh?" Izuku wondered. "So he's a hero student?" "Yep. His hero name is Sugar Man. He gets super strong when he eats sugar." "Ah." Izuku understood how he got the position then. Boss has always been very particular about her kitchen. If it wasn't for the fact that they had to walk through it to get to the employee dressing room, Uraraka and himself wouldn't be allowed to step foot into it. "Does he happen to have experience baking?" "Yes! He often brings in sweets from his family's bakery." "If his family has a bakery, why is he taking a job here?" "Well," Uraraka seemed reluctant to speak, "I don't want to spread any rumors, but I heard his family was having financial problems. So even if he worked there, they wouldn't be making any extra money. If it's true, he's probably working here to help them pay bills." Izuku nodded. If true, that would definitely explain it. But even if it isn't, there's nothing illegal or suspicious about working outside of your family's business. Either way, it really wasn't his business. He was just curious. Izuku took out his phone to check the time. "Hey, Uraraka, I have an appointment I have to go to quick. I should be back within an hour. Would you be okay by yourself for a bit?" "Yeah, I'll be fine. Just hope Boss doesn't notice you're not here." "I'm pretty sure she doesn't actually realize when I'm here, so I think it will be fine." Izuku heard Uraraka giggle as she took off his apron and set it on the counter. Slowly, he left the cafe and walked into the nearby alley. Before his shift, he had hidden a bag with some nondescript clothing in it. He donned a dark sweatshirt, wrapped the thick scarf around the bottom half of his face, wore large, dark sunglasses, and put on a hat while making sure none of his hair was loose. Izuku probably looked a little suspicious. Scratch that. He looked more than a little suspicious. But it was the only way he was going to be able to hide his identity while also being fairly inconspicuous. He would get too many looks if he walked around outside in his crime fighter uniform. He may look weird being wrapped up like a mummy in May, but most people would just assume that he was embarrassed about the way he looked or that it had something to do with his quirk. They would look at him weirdly, then look away just as quickly, because it's not polite to stare at people. He stood at the entryway to the alley and waited. After about 10 minutes, a normal-looking man with no outstanding features walked into the cafe, right on time, and exactly what Izuku imagined when thinking about someone who named themselves the normal hero. Mizushima Mazaki. Izuku waited another 5 minutes before following Mizushima into the cafe. The bell chimed and he heard Uraraka's voice welcoming him. He looked around for half a second before finding his target situated in a seat furthest from the door. He ignored Uraraka, walked over to the table, and took a seat across from Mizushima. "Ah, there you are," Mizushima said with a smile. "I have to say, you look both very different and horribly the same outside of your normal attire." "And you look exactly the way I thought you would." Mizushima laughed good-naturedly. "Exactly." Izuku huffed in amusement. "Well, I hope we don't get interrupted this time." "Ah, yeah, that was rather unfortunate. How are you healing up?" "I'm doing fine." Izuku brushed his question aside. Izuku looked up when he saw something approaching out of the corner of his eye. He had seen Uraraka's quirk used up close many times, but this was the first time he was on the opposing side of it. "I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of ordering for us both." "That's fine," Izuku said. Truthfully, over the time he'd been working at the cafe, he had made himself each drink at least once and had found very few drinks he didn't like. Izuku grabbed the large mug out of the air. Once both of their cups were in their hands, Izuku heard the quiet "release" coming from the counter. He was going to have to find out if she could dispel her quirk without speaking. Doing so could cause her to give herself away in the future. If it's necessary, then she will need to get herself a face mask with a silencer, unless it's required that her target can hear her cancel out her quirk. But how would that work on inanimate objects? Well, there was that one theory that everything has some sort of soul. Maybe the soul has to hear it? If that's the case, she wouldn't be able to work any cases that required absolute silence while operating. Okay, Izuku had to stop thinking of this right now. If he went on any further, he was going to go down a rabbit hole and be late back to work. He can make notes about it later. To Izuku's surprise, when he grabbed the mug, it was cold, not hot. The drink was put in the wrong type of cup. Well, that didn't surprise Izuku too much. They had been pretty busy and had not had a chance to do dishes. But it didn't look very professional. Well, at least it was only Izuku. He would have to remember to do better about making sure there were dishes clean in the future. Izuku took the accompanying straw, unwrapped it, and put it in the drink. He took a sip. It was an iced caramel macchiato. Mizushima must have just asked what Uraraka's favorite drink was, because this was it. It had an ungodly amount of caramel and an undercurrent of vanilla that she was fond of. No one else had ever made it that way. Izuku sat the cup down. The top heavy straw flipped out of the glass as soon as the cup was sat down, and coffee was splattered across the table. Mizushima giggled while Izuku cleaned it up with a napkin. "So, what did you want to ask me?" Mizushima asked once he stopped giggling. "I wanted to talk to you about your coworker, Jetstream." Mizushima paused and looked at Izuku with more seriousness than Izuku thought he would be able to muster. "I know your reputation and what you've been doing lately. In fact, any hero worth their salt should be aware of your actions." Izuku pretended to casually lean back against the chair, but it was in fact getting ready to dodge any attacks that would be thrown at him. "That being said, I have to be honest, I was wondering when you would get around to him." Izuku nearly jumped in shock. "What?" he asked. "I am more than aware of the type of actions Jetstream has committed. I had hoped that the first time it happened that it was just a fluke, an accident, but it wasn't." "Then why didn't you do something about it?" Mizushima smiled at Izuku sadly. If I could have, I would have. What do you mean? I suppose since you're not a hero, there are some things you don't really know. But there's this unwritten rule of being a hero. Unwritten rule. That's right. Heroes are not allowed to arrest other heroes. What? Why? It's considered out of our jurisdiction. Then what happens to heroes when they try to? It's unwritten, so there can't be any legal action taken. That's correct. It's not like they would be arrested in turn or anything like that, but other heroes would refuse to work with them. Depending on the agency, this could result in that hero being fired or even dying while in the field. Then what about the police? Izuku asked with a hint of desperation in his voice. The police are banned from using their quirks. Without sufficient evidence of wrongdoing, many of them are reluctant to try to arrest a hero. And there is very rarely sufficient evidence. That's where you come in. Me? Yes, you. You are not afraid of digging in and finding the truth. You have no idea how relieved many of us were when you started to bring justice to those who deserved it. What about when Stain was doing it? Stain wasn't bringing justice. He was bringing anarchy. You know as well as I do that not everyone he killed was actually a villain in disguise. I do. Mizushima nodded in agreement. So when you took over Stain's work and did it in the correct way, we became so grateful to you. If there is anything I can do to help you with your work, I will do it. Well then, how about we start with a statement about Jetstream? Mizushima grinned brightly and sat up straight. Izuku took a camera and placed it on the table. The camera had both audio and video and was encrypted to prevent anyone from changing what was recorded. Izuku had even guarded it against technology quirks. This was a brand new camera, and Izuku was using it for the first time. But this was also the highest ranked hero he had gone after this far. Everything had to be perfect. Without any more delay, he pressed record. End of chapter. Chapter 32. Izuku turned his nose into the air, a scent distracting him from handing change back to the customer in front of him. After snapping back to attention with a blush, he gave the customer their change, then turned towards where Sato was bringing a tray of fancily decorated slices of cake. Those smell good. What kind of cake did you make today? Izuku asked. Well, it's summer now. I decided to make a strawberry lemon cake, Sato replied. That's some pretty fancy decorations you have on top, Uraraka said, hooking her chin over Izuku's shoulder to get a better look. Sato laughed heartily. Yeah, it's a trick boss taught me. You take paper doilies and place them lightly on top of the cake, then lightly dust the top with powdered sugar. It gives the cake a pretty decoration without bogging it down with frosting that may be too sweet or too heavy. It works especially well with lightly flavored cakes, like this lemon one, because it allows the flavor of the cake to come through without the frosting overwhelming it. Oh? Izuku hummed. Yeah, she's great. I never expected to learn so much, Sato said while smiling widely. After placing each slice of cake into the display, he retreated back into the kitchen to clean up and start on his next project. Hey, Midoriya, Uraraka said, taking her chin off Izuku's shoulder. What are you doing this Saturday? Izuku thought for a moment. Boss had to be gone for a family function of some sort, so the cafe was going to be closed. Izuku had originally planned on taking advantage of the newly healed leg to go to the gym. That night was going to be his first time back on the streets since he faced down the hero killer. Not that he was planning on stopping his other project or anything like that, but he needed to get back into the swing of working the streets. That, and he had a couple of contacts to get in touch with. Nothing much. Why? He responded. My class and I will be going on a field trip and will be gone for about a week. There are a few things I need to grab, so I'm going to the mall this weekend with some of my classmates. Want to come with us? Izuku looked at her in surprise. Izuku couldn't remember the last time he went to the mall. It must have been at the end of elementary school or the beginning of middle school. It was only once. Then Izuku never went back. He had stepped into the building, then was nearly chased back out. None of the places he tried to shop would allow him to even step foot inside, as if his mere presence would contaminate the air within and make it uninhabitable. And it was all because of his shoes. But that wasn't a problem anymore. The mall was far enough away that no one would know him, and the shoes he got from Hatsume were black. No one would know he was quirkless. Sure, I'd love to, Izuku responded. It's not like he really needed anything, but it had been a long time since he had seen his other friends in person. It would be nice to catch up through more than just the occasional text message. Saturday came quickly. Izuku and Uraraka woke up early in the morning after a night of binge-watching an old All Might cartoon and got ready in their respective apartments. Within an hour of waking, they were on their way to the train station. The mall was a monstrous building containing a large food court, a multitude of stores, a few arcades, a bowling alley, a go-kart track, and a multi-room movie theater. The two of them were supposed to meet the remainder of the class in the food court. Izuku's heart rate gradually increased the closer they got to the front door. What was he going to do if he got chased out again? And it's extremely clear that he's arriving with Uraraka. What would happen to her career if the public found out she was friends with someone like him? The doors opened. He felt a period of lightheadedness as he crossed the threshold. Then nothing happened. There were no harsh whispers or malicious stares. Security wasn't being called. No one was trying to chase him back out the doors. It was weird. It was unusual. It was refreshing. Just being able to be himself and not having people only see and judge him by his lack of a quirk. But how long was that going to last? When meeting someone new, the first question that is usually asked is, "What's your quirk?" It's damn near socially obligatory. His friends may have been aware of his quirklessness, but he wasn't really keen about strangers knowing that about him right away. What if one of them had a big mouth? What if they blabbed that he didn't have a quirk where other people in the mall could hear them? And again, how would that affect the futures of his friends? Yeah, he just wouldn't say anything. He would hang back away from the rest of the class. He always had been pretty plain looking. It should be easy enough for those who didn't know him to overlook him in favor of talking to the people they did know. Uraraka stopped off to the side of the entrance while she looked around the food court. They had agreed to meet there, but not where in the food court. She found them crowded around a table in one of the back corners and started to head in their direction. Izuku followed 3 paces behind her. Close enough to tell they were together, but far enough away that he would be able to pretend to not know her in a pinch. Uraraka greeted her classmates with a smile while Izuku held back. His friends noticed him hanging back and looked very confused. Izuku would have laughed at their faces if it wouldn't have drawn unwanted attention. Instead, he giggled under his breath. Out of the corner of his eye, Izuku saw a splash of purple. "So you know Uraraka?" Izuku looked up and saw Shinso standing beside him. "Yeah, we know each other," he replied. "I heard her say something about bringing a friend, but I never thought it would be you." "I'm just full of surprises." "That you are." The first time Eijiro saw him, he was sporting a little smile and softly giggling. He felt like his feet were bolted to the ground and the air suspended around him. His guilty pleasure was reading romance novels. When the main characters find their soulmates, they describe the moment as one where time stops. He always thought it was a figure of speech, but it definitely wasn't. Eijiro watched as first Shinso, then Uraraka, Jiro, Asui, and Ojiro went to greet the green-haired teen. Even Sato gave him a small wave. How did so many of his classmates know him? How could Eijiro get to know him? Because Eijiro may be dumb, but he wasn't stupid. You can't just walk up to someone and say, "Hey, I'm pretty sure you're my destiny. Let's spend the rest of our lives together." No, you have to wait until at least the second date for that. How is he going to get that first date, though? Eijiro saw how the curly-haired teen hid himself behind his classmates and tried to make himself look small by hunching in his shoulders. And it didn't look like it was necessarily a conscious decision. Eijiro could tell. He was like that at one time too. But once he got into high school, he purposefully made the decision to have more confidence in himself and his abilities. He still had instances of insecurities, but he was working on it. Every time he looked in the mirror and saw his hair purposefully dyed red and styled into a series of spikes, it reminded him of his convictions, and he gained the confidence he needed to get through the day. Maybe that's what the smaller boy needed, a physical change to remind him that he is stronger than his insecurities. Eijiro was more than aware that things like that didn't help everyone, but if he hadn't tried it yet, it couldn't hurt. Now the question was, how to get to know him. He would think about it and make his move after the training camp. "You never told us you knew our classmates," Ojiro playfully jabbed. "You never asked," Izuku said with a grin. "This is actually really weird," Jiro commented. "What?" Shinso asked. "He's at least acquainted with nearly a third of our class. We all met him in different locations and under different circumstances. It wouldn't be unusual if we had met him as a group, but it seems weird to have all of us meet him separately and end up in the same place." Jiro responded, "They didn't need to know. It was actually closer to half." "Maybe it's destiny, Ribbit," Suyu said with a small, close-lipped smile. "That's got to be it," Uraraka said with a smile. "Well, I only got into the hero course by the skin of my teeth. Maybe he was supposed to have my spot," Shinso commented. They didn't want to mention the already empty spot in their class. "Well, let's not think about that. Everyone here earned the spot they have, and Midoriya is working towards being a hero in his own way. That's what you told us when we first met," Ojiro said. Izuku nodded. "I have not given up on saving people." "That's all we can ask for, Ribbit," Suyu nodded. "Speaking of saving people," Uraraka interrupted, "we have a training camp to get ready for." The others nodded as they heard Ida shout over the sound of the different friend groups talking. "Everyone, please form orderly groups based on what you need to purchase. We will meet back here in 2 hours. With a clap of his hands, everyone dispersed. Izuku noticed it was the friends groups who went off with each other. He highly doubted they formed their friend groups around what they needed, so they probably ignored Ida's suggestion altogether. Ojiro left to join a group with Sato and a large man with multiple arms who was wearing a mask. Shinso went off by himself, ever the lone wolf. Jiro left to follow a group that included a girl with pink skin, a short boy with a lightning bolt in his hair, a tall boy with tape dispensers for elbows, and a muscular boy with spiked hair and a bright smile. Izuku noticed a small blush on the boy's face as he looked in the direction of Suyu and Uraraka. He looked nice enough, but he was going to have to find out more about him if he was going to be around Izuku's friends more closely than just being classmates. Suyu and Uraraka pulled Izuku over to a couple consisting of Ida and a tall girl with her long dark hair flowing down her back. "Hi guys, Suyu and I wanted to introduce you to a friend of ours. This is Midoriya Izuku." Izuku nodded at them while slightly hiding behind the other two. "Hello, my name is Ida Tenya. It is good to meet a friend of our friends," Ida said loudly. Izuku could kind of understand why he would have to be loud to be heard inside his armor, and why he would have to yell above the large group. But why does he have to be loud right at that moment? I'm Yaoyorozu Momo. We haven't seen you around campus before. Are you in another course? The tall girl asked politely. No, Izuku responded. I don't attend UA. Oh, I'm sorry for assuming. What school do you go to? I'm actually not going to school at this time. That's not good at all, Ida said loudly. Education is important for your personal growth. It's essential you have a high school education. Izuku's eye twitched. I said I wasn't in school right now, not that I wasn't going to high school. I was accepted into a school in the United States. Their semesters don't start until August. Izuku was slightly mollified when Ida's face turned a dark shade of pink. Oh, he stuttered, then swiftly bowed. I'm sorry for assuming. I will work on obtaining more information before voicing an opinion in the future. That would be a good trait for a hero to have, he said under his breath. I accept your apology, he said loud enough for Ida to hear. Ida stood from his bow and took out a list. All right, there is not a lot that I need. It's mostly things like bug spray and sunscreen. Most of what we had at home was expired. What does everyone else need? I don't need much of anything, Yaoyorozu stated, but if anyone needs help picking anything out, I am more than happy to help. I don't need anything either, Ribbit, Tsuyu said. I'm not really sure what I need, Uraraka said. Izuku knew this was code for, I don't really have much money and I need pretty much everything, but I'm not going to let anyone know because it's embarrassing. So I'm going to go to every store until I find what I need that happens to be on sale. They started walking towards the first store with Izuku following 3 paces behind. Store after store they walked through, looked at everything and anything. Frankly, after not doing this for so long, being around this many people was exhausting. I'm going to sit out this next store, Izuku told Uraraka. She looked at him worriedly. Are you going to be okay? She asked. Yeah, I'll be fine. I will just be sitting on that bench next to the fountain. Okay, we will be back soon. Izuku watched her walk away, then went and sat on the bench. He closed his eyes, leaned back against the back, and took a deep breath. A hand clamped down on the back of his neck on the exhale. His breath caught in his throat. He could only feel 4 fingers. A combination of anger and anxiety crawled up from his gut, making his heart race. He stayed still and took another couple of deep breaths. He wouldn't want to lash out and accidentally touch the 5th finger. When he felt like he could face Shigaraki Tomura without attempting to attack him, and it would be an attempt, he's not stupid enough to think otherwise, he opened his eyes and slowly turned his head in the direction of the arm. Shigaraki was looking at him from the shadows of his hooded sweatshirt. That startled me. Thanks for waiting. Izuku started their conversation. And wasn't that just odd in and of itself? The man who was most known for going off on people at the drop of the hat actually had the patience to wait for Izuku to collect himself before talking. More than likely, whatever he wanted to talk about was important enough that he couldn't risk killing him right away. Does that mean he could have escaped if he really wanted to? But he really didn't want to test his theory that since a human was technically one object, if Shigaraki was grabbing onto something with 4 of his fingers and you grabbed the 5th one, it would activate his quirk and kill his victim. Well, I can't have my analyst dying on me quite yet, Shigaraki answered. Oh, Izuku asked, then why are you here? You're an analyst. I want you to analyze something for me. I already told you I wasn't going to give you any information about All Might. especially now that you actively attacked a school full of children. Well, yes, that would have been nice information to have, but that's not the information I wanted. Then what did you want? Why are Stain and this absent person overshadowing me? Oh boy. Shigaraki wanted Izuku to tell him why Izuku was more popular than him. This should be a fun conversation. Not. He basically had to brag, but not reveal his identity. He knew he liked a challenge, but he has never been good at talking about himself. But considering most of his popularity piggybacked off of Stain's now dwindling following, he could use that, and it should apply to both. Because they have something they stand for, Izuku said confidently. Are you saying they are popular because they have morals? Shigaraki sneered. Not exactly, Izuku said slowly. Stain didn't really have any morals per se. He just had something he believed in and took the measures he thought was necessary to reach his goal. That is exactly what I'm doing, he insisted. Destruction is not a goal. Izuku growled back. Our goals are the same. Tear down the heroes, to make them fear for their lives. No. Stain wanted a better breed of hero and believed the only way to get it was to kill off the bad ones. The fear was a side effect of his actions, not the purpose of them. Shigaraki looked at him silently. Then what about absent? He said after a few minutes. If what you can read online can be believed, he has the same goal as Stain, but works within the law to accomplish it. He doesn't want to destroy society, but wants to make it better. So what you're saying is that they are just like me? What? No. Yeah, they destroy what they hate too, Shigaraki said excitedly. Well, maybe Stain, but... And you will help me destroy what I hate. What? Shigaraki squeezed down on the sides of Izuku's neck, putting pressure on the carotid arteries. Izuku lifted his hand toward his neck, but it wasn't his airway that was being blocked. He could breathe just fine. His eyesight started to blur. Shigaraki was cutting the oxygen supply off to his brain. Izuku absently wondered if it was intentional. It probably wasn't. It's time to go, little analyst. Hey, haven't I seen you around the coffee shop? Izuku fought to look up. He recognized the voice, but couldn't remember their name. All he saw was a blur of soft colors. His hand fell to his lap. His eyes drifted shut. Shigaraki released his neck. The sudden influx of oxygenated blood rushed to his head, causing a burst of dizziness. Izuku listed to the side, but caught himself on the arm of the bench at the last second. It looks like your coworker is here. Don't worry, I'll come back to get you, Shigaraki whispered into Izuku's hair. He looked at Uraraka. Yes, I'm around that area quite frequently. I was just saying hello to my favorite barista. Then, with a small wave, he walked away. Uraraka ran over to Izuku. Midoriya, are you okay? Did you know him? Shigaraki, he said quietly. What? Uraraka asked in mounting horror. We have to call the heroes. She jumped to her feet. Izuku grabbed her wrist. Wait, stop. Wait, what? Why? What do you think will happen if someone goes after him right now? How many people do you think he could kill before the heroes got here? And you can't do anything. You're not licensed. But nothing. You may not like it, but there are some times you will just have to let the villain go in order to save the greatest number of people. Uraraka clenched her fists. Then if we can't call any heroes, we should at least report it to the police. That's fine. So, did you get his name this time? Damn it! Tsukashi walked into the food court of the mall where Absent and a member of Class 1A were sitting. But, of course, Midoriya Izuku didn't know that Tsukashi knew he was absent, and he wasn't going to out Midoriya in front of his friends. If Midoriya's friends knew about him being absent, he would have called dispatch like he normally would. This was not Absent's normal area to patrol, but he had been through a time or two, and the dispatch operators were aware of who he was. But he didn't do that. Instead, Uraraka Ochako had called to report the sighting of Shigaraki Tomura. Tsukashi hadn't even known Midoriya was involved until he arrived at the scene. When Tsukashi got there, the responding officer relayed the story of what happened to him. As the lead investigator into the League of Villains, he would be the one overseeing this one as well, which, as far as Tsukashi was concerned, was exactly what he wanted. He was much more likely to take Midoriya's story seriously. Midoriya's quirklessness was bound to come up sooner or later. As soon as that happened, any other officer would drop his statements immediately, which could cost them valuable information. Tsukashi was completely aware of how reliant they would end up being on Midoriya's analysis of Shigaraki. He was the only one to have had long-term contact with him, and they could not risk wasting his talent. No, it was definitely better for Tsukashi to take over. He took the notes from the officer, then walked over to Midoriya and Uraraka. There were a few things he wanted to clarify. He spoke with Uraraka first. She was the one to make the report, after all. But she also spoke a single sentence with him, and the exchange only lasted a few seconds. Detective Tsukashi? Uraraka asked. Yes? Do you have something to add to your statement? Well, I don't really know. I think I may have misheard, so I didn't say anything to the officer, but I'm concerned about Midoriya. Why is that? I'm pretty sure I heard Shigaraki say he would come back for him. Tsukashi felt like he was being tossed into a pool of ice water. That was not good. In fact, that was bad. That was very, very bad. If the League of Villains got their hands on Midoriya's analysis, then it was impossible to imagine Japan surviving for long. The entire world could even be in jeopardy. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I will do everything in my power to make sure Midoriya stays safe. Uraraka looked at him with relief. Tsukashi released her from the scene, but told her to wait with her classmates outside the building. She was still a minor and had to be picked up by a guardian. She had mentioned to the responding officer that her parents lived across Japan, so Tsukashi had called Eraserhead to come pick up his class. He wasn't there quite yet, but should be there soon. Tsukashi took a deep breath before turning to where Midoriya was sitting. He had declined medical assistance and was now just sitting and waiting for his turn. His posture was stiff, and he was keeping an eye on each exit and everyone who came too close to him. Did he act like that when Tsukashi saw him before? Was it because this was a much larger environment? Was this a new development? Or was it that Tsukashi was just too caught up in his case with the bank robber that he didn't see what was in front of him? He really hoped it was one of the first options, but he was almost positive it was the last. It felt like a knife was tearing through his heart. No child should have to develop those skills, especially not around law enforcement. And now that he looked even closer, he found that the brilliant child was obviously malnourished. And it was not a recent lack of food. The baby fat that should have still been on his cheeks was gone, and his face looked long and lean instead of round. The sleeves of his shirt looked far more baggy than they should have been. Hello, Midoriya. I'm not sure if you remember me, but I spoke with you some months ago about a bank robbery. You really helped us out that time. Yeah, I remember, Midoriya responded, but a dark look clouded his eyes. Tsukashi would not at all be surprised if Midoriya had found out about the bank robber being part of the USJ. The news reported the identities of each person arrested, and the villain would have been easy enough to spot since he had watched that surveillance video. I'm glad. Tsukashi attempted to bring a bit of warmth back into the conversation. Now, can you tell me anything about your interaction with Shigaraki Tomura? Nothing more than what I told the officer. Truth. Okay, that didn't answer any questions. Tsukashi needed to know if what Uraraka had heard Shigaraki say was correct. But if Tsukashi just came out and asked about it, he was certain Midoriya would shut down. What do you think you could tell me about his quirk? Tsukashi asked instead. What do you know about it already? Midoriya asked. It made sense. No reason to tell him what they already know. It's a 5-point activation quirk that disintegrates anything he touches. As far as we can tell, as long as he can touch it with all 5 fingers, there is no object too large. Although there is probably a limit, we don't have enough information to determine what that limit is yet. And it would be too dangerous to keep allowing him to use it to get that information. Because of this, we are operating under the assumption that there is no limit. We figure it's better to be more cautious when so many lives could be at stake. Midoriya nodded. Good idea. He paused. There are a couple things I would like to add. After another moment, as if deciding whether he should actually say something or not, he spoke. I believe that the only way to stop his quirk would be to cut off all 5 of his fingers. It would be better to just cut off his hand to be safe. Tsukashi felt like a hand had grabbed his lungs and squeezed the air out. This was not something a child should have to think about. This was not something a child should have to do. But he knew that if Midoriya had to save someone from Shigaraki, he would not hesitate to do just that. Tsukashi smiled harshly. What's the other thing? He was almost scared to hear. It's actually related to the first. Decay isn't the quirk Shigaraki was born with. If Tsukashi wasn't sitting, he would have fallen to his knees at that revelation. There had been a thought floating around that he was involved in the League of Villains. The Nomu at the USJ was the first piece of evidence that All For One wasn't actually killed in this fight with All Might all those years ago. And now they may possibly have another. Why do you say that? Although we say he has a 5-point activation quirk, he doesn't have any activation pads on his fingers. What? Then he shouldn't be able to have that type of quirk. That's what we would normally think. But if he was given his quirk instead of being born with it, he wouldn't have been born with the pads that are normally associated with 5-point activation quirks. So, in order to make it work, his body made his entire finger the activation pad. So, in someone normal, if the pad was destroyed, the quirk would be unusable. But with Shigaraki, since his entire finger is the pad, even if you cut off the tip, the area that was cut would then become the activation pad. You would literally have to make it so that he no longer had 5 points to be able to use his quirk. I suppose that makes sense. Tsukashi finished writing down Midoriya's theory. Now that that was over, it was time for Tsukashi to ask the hard question. We will look into the possibility of someone having given Shigaraki his quirk. Midoriya gave Tsukashi a knowing look. It made Tsukashi nervous. He could only hope Midoriya wasn't going to do what he thought he was going to do, but that was just wishful thinking. Tsukashi knew exactly what was going to happen, but he couldn't stop him. So he was just going to have to find someone to help Midoriya. And now that he thought of it, the perfect person for the job was going to be at the mall in just a few minutes. Tsukashi would talk to him after he was done with Midoriya. There is one more question I have for you, Tsukashi continued. Did Shigaraki tell you he was going to come back to get you? Midoriya's eyes flashed to Tsukashi's face. No, he said confidently. Lie. For a moment, Tsukashi felt bad about not disclosing his quirk to Midoriya, but he is ultimately glad he didn't. Otherwise, Midoriya would have found some way around it and he wouldn't have gotten a clear answer. Sometimes using loopholes is for the best. He didn't have to disclose his quirk when interviewing a witness, only when questioning a suspect. Okay then, thank you for helping us out today. Would it be okay for me to contact you if I have any follow-up questions? Tsukashi asked. Yeah, I guess. Midoriya reluctantly gave Tsukashi his cell phone number. Thank you. Oh, also, I know you declined having a paramedic look at your neck, but would you give us permission to take some pictures for the evidence file? Midoriya sighed and pulled down the collar of his shirt. Tsukashi figured he was probably tired of being wound up for so long. He would be sure to take these fast, then let him go. Tsukashi kneeled next to Midoriya and angled his camera in a way that did not cast a shadow on the bruises forming on Midoriya's neck. He could clearly see the mark of a thumb on one side and 3 larger fingers on the other. Tsukashi also, semi-intentionally, took a photo of Midoriya that showcased the protrusion of his collarbone. He was going to have to make a third file for Midoriya. He had one for being a confidential informant, another for his crime fighter cases, and this third one will be for Tsukashi to investigate the neglect Midoriya was obviously suffering from. If he had enough officers he could trust, Tsukashi would just create a Midoriya Izuku squad, a group of individuals that could be used specifically for investigating any cases Midoriya found himself working on or for investigating anything having to do with Midoriya himself. But sadly, he was fairly certain he was currently the only one that would do his job on that squad. Okay, all done. You can go now. If I need to follow up with anything, I will call you. Thank you for your help today. Midoriya bowed to Tsukashi, then quickly left. Tsukashi saw that not a single one of his officers noticed the boy leaving. Just 1 minute after Midoriya left, a man with shaggy black hair, black sweatsuit, and a gray scarf walked through the doors. Hey, Eraserhead. Did you happen to notice a kid with curly green hair when you got here? Tsukashi asked. No. Should I have? Aizawa Shota, a.k.a. Eraserhead, asked. He was the kid that got held here by Shigaraki today. Is he okay? Just some bruises. But I actually have to talk to you about a different matter regarding him. Oh? Is he a problem child? Probably, Tsukashi sighed. He's a crime fighter. Tsukashi knew that was the only thing he really had to say. Although crime fighters were rare, Eraserhead had worked with many quirkless kids during his career. He had turned more than one away from that particular route. You know he's a crime fighter and you didn't try to stop him? Eraserhead said, anger clear in his voice. He's not just any crime fighter. He's absent. Eraserhead was taken aback. Absent is a kid? Yep, and a brilliant one to boot. How brilliant. I'm sure Nedzu would be foaming at the mouth to be able to teach him. Nedzu must never know of his existence, Eraserhead said seriously. Tsukashi laughed, then got serious. That brilliance is also what has him on the League of Villains watch list. So let me guess, you want me to watch him? Eraserhead asked. I would appreciate it. You're probably the only one who would be able to keep up with him. Although I'm not sure how he's doing his work considering the state he's in. I thought you said Shigaraki only gave him bruises. Shigaraki did only give him bruises. He has another problem I'm more concerned about. Tsukashi pulled up the camera roll on his phone and selected the photos of Midoriya. I couldn't take any pictures of the rest of his body without him being suspicious, but if you take a look at these, you will probably get a gist of what I'm talking about. Eraserhead took Tsukashi's phone and flipped through the photos. His fingers clenched around the case. Those can't be his collarbones. I can't see any muscles around them. That's because there are none. I'm going to be opening an investigation into his home life. That kind of thing doesn't happen overnight. He had to have been neglected for years to get into that state. Send me any information you have. I will do the field work. If you happen to know where he regularly patrols, I will keep an eye on him there as much as I can. Tsukashi looked at Eraserhead with a tilt to his head. You mean you haven't met him in person? Well, I guess most of the heroes I have talked to about him only know of him from communications and the news, but I thought at least you would have met him in person. Why's that? He patrols the same area you do. I will have to find him then. Eraserhead sighed. Unfortunately, I will probably not be able to do much until after the training camp. Tsukashi nodded. I will start the investigation then and send you what I find out. Then you can take over after you get back. Sounds like a plan. Hopefully he won't get himself into too much trouble before then. End of chapter.